Let's get it started. Happy New Year to all our listeners and everyone here. I hope this new year brings a ton of good things to you all. And we are going to talk about a very important topic today. It's the how to determine the water need of a landscape. So the learning objectives for today would be understanding what is water budget or what is the water need of a landscape, understanding the evapotranspiration and factors affecting evapotranspiration, understanding plant water use classification. We'll do some calculations here as we move on with the webinar. We will also understand how to develop water budget for different hydrozone, and towards the end, we'll use a simple online tool designed and developed for Utah to do some water need calculation. So first thing first, how does the water look right now? As you all know, this is the map that I downloaded yesterday. And in fact, today, this morning, just to put in the perspective, last time this year, it was around like 190, 200, or maybe more than average. But this year, we are below the normal. So yes, we need those snows coming on us. We need more snow, in fact. And from what I can see right now, it's not going to be as exciting in the water world as last year. But then we all are well prepared, so I think we'll handle it well. What is water budget, or what is water need, or what is a budget? Basically, a budget is a plan that estimates expenses, and it's based on an income, and it has the time frame. It has that time frame, say 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, 5 month, or 1 year. So that is budget. You have your income or something coming in, the expenses, that's what's going out, what's coming in, that's budget. Now, what is landscape water budget? It's very similar to budget. In fact, it is the plan that estimates how much water is needed to maintain a healthy landscape in a specific period of time. Okay, so how many gallons of water is needed to maintain our landscape? And how do we reference it? We reference it to how much water do we actually have, or how much water do we plan to invest or plan to apply in the landscape, and that will give us landscape water budget or landscape water need. Now, if you have high water using plants and you want to cut your water use, then you can budget it by choosing a low water use plant or something like that. So landscape water need or landscape water budget is the water required to maintain a healthy landscape for a specific amount of time. And what are the factors that determine water dynamics or water need of the landscape? Can someone in the chat write down what would be the factors that determine water need of a landscape? Anyone in the chat? It's going to be a little bit of like interactive webinar today. So slope, yes, slope, Jack. Soil type, plant. Wow, good. Types of plant. Awesome. Wow, good, Evelyn. Evapotranspiration. Okay, good. So yeah, so let's move on. So the first factor is weather, plant type. So it's weather, plant type, and area of the landscape. Basically, these three. So if we can accommodate these factors and do some simple calculation, we'll easily be able to determine the water need of a landscape. So water budget or water need would be weather into plant type into area. So when we talk about weather in water budget or water need calculation, it is basically evapotranspiration. So evapotranspiration is composed of two words, evaporation and transpiration. Evaporation is the amount of water evaporating or going off from a soil surface, or from a soil surface. And transpiration is the amount of water that is going out of plant through the holes in the leaves or stems. Transpiration, plant pull up water to conduct or to perform various activities or metabolic activities in the plants, or various physiological activities in the plants. And not all the water that plant pull up from the soil is used by the plant. In fact, it might surprise you that the plant might only use 5 to 10% of the water that they pull up from the ground. And 90% of the water that they pull up is evaporated, it's gone. It's transpirated, it's gone from the plant leaf. And that is and plant wouldn't want to do that. They are using energy to pull up water, and it's very hard for plant to pull up water. So they wouldn't like to give it up. But then plant need carbon dioxide to photosynthesize it to make food, and the plant take up carbon dioxide through the pores that are in their leaves. Now, when they open their pores in the leaves, they can't help but the water just evaporates out. When the carbon dioxide is coming in, the water is going out the leaf because the leaf is fully saturated and the atmosphere is deprived of water. So there is a huge concentration gradient that is just trying to pull water from the leaves, and immediately when the stomata opens, the water goes out, and that is transpiration. Evapotranspiration. So what determines evapotranspiration? It's not a simple thing like we put one device that's measure one thing in there and we get evapotranspiration. Evapotranspiration is calculated by using a lot of different factors, which includes solar radiation. As we all know in this figure here, in summer we have high evapotranspiration, and in winter we have lower evapotranspiration. That is because in summer you can see that the earth here is tilted like this in the figure, and a lot of some rays of the lights are hitting in, meaning we get direct sunlight. But in the winter, like in Utah, it's tilted, and when it's tilted, there are less number of rays of the sun hitting the same surface. So basically solar radiation is a little bit less, and so is the evapotranspiration. Not only radiation, it's a complex thing, as I told you. Also air temperature. The higher the air temperature, the more the evapotranspiration. Hence, in winter, the temperature is cooler, hence lower evapotranspiration. Also, relative humidity. So relative humidity is the amount of water the atmosphere can hold. So if we have really high humidity, the air already has that water, so it's not going to pull that water faster. But if we have really dry climate or less relative humidity, then the pulling of the water is going to be faster. So evapotranspiration is going to increase a little bit more. Wind speed. The higher the wind, the faster it's taking away the water from the atmosphere. So the evapotranspiration rate might increase. Soil exposure. This is a complex thing. Sometimes the more soil exposure, the higher the evapotranspiration. But sometimes if there are more plants and less exposure, it might be high. It depends on the growing stage of plant, what is in that soil versus exposed soil. So there is not a one directional relation between evapotranspiration and soil exposure. It depends. Planting density, again, if we have more plants, dense plants, there might be more transpiration and hence leading to more evapotranspiration. And if there are less plants, less transpiration. So those are the factors that goes in to calculate the amount of water that is evaporating or transpirating. Evaporating and transpirating. But then there is something called reference evapotranspiration. Now, evapotranspiration, while reference evapotranspiration and evapotranspiration are similar, reference evapotranspiration is a baseline, or in our landscape world, is a baseline on which we compare other plants' water needs. So the reference evapotranspiration is the rate of evapotranspiration from an extensive surface of green grass, usually Kentucky bluegrass, of uniform height, well-watered, completely shading, and growing in the ground. So other conditions remaining same, this grass grown at different places will have similar reference evapotranspiration, and it also has that high water need. So well watered, high water using plant, when they are very healthy, they use maximum amount of water. So anything when we compare to that, it's going to be lower. So when we say the plant factor is 70% of ETO, reference evapotranspiration, it means if that green grass needs 100% of water, our plant would meet 80%. So that's so reference evapotranspiration is a value to which we compare plant water yields. So, and we calculate that using climate data and using reference crops data. Um, and again, as I told, reference evapotranspiration can be measured hourly, weekly, daily, monthly, or yearly. So there are a lot of things that goes into the reference evapotranspiration, such as solar radiation, air temperature, relative humidity, wind, planting density. Now, to calculate water budget, do we need to go ourselves, get all those numbers, and do the have that value so that we can use it in the calculation? You can, but you don't need to. There are a lot of websites such as this climateusu.edu. If you go and click here, let me click it for you. If we click this, you will be, I think you all can see this, you'll be taken into this network of weather stations, and then you can go to, say, I'm in Logan. So if we go to North Logan, this is Greenbelt Research Farm, this is Logan Golf Club, this is USU Environmental Observatory. So let's click on USU and view station data. So if you go in here and view that data, and if you go to evapotranspiration here, then you can see the amount of evapotranspiration. You can go it by hourly or daily, or if you want to download data for 7 days, you can click like, okay, I want from 25 to maybe 1, and I do daily, and it will download me a file with all those data, and that will give you a number for your landscape. Alternatively, here is another link, which when you click it, what we did at USU, at Sewell, is compiled data for different weather stations in Utah. So as this one may be intimidating, or maybe even confusing sometimes, and it doesn't let you look at the monthly data. You need to calculate it, or it's to boil it down, it's good for a researcher, but for a regular person, it's a little bit complex to get a monthly data from here. So what we did at Sewell is we went, downloaded all the data for these weather stations here, and averaged it by month. So if you go to this link, it will take you here, and this is for Alta, and this is averaged for 2000 to 2022 for different month, and this is ETO in inches, and this is precipitation in inches. So if you would like to use this data for your reference, you're welcome to use the link and download it. But then again, okay, let me minimize this. And as I said, you can use it. And how these data are generated is by something like this. This is a weather station, and it has a lot of different components. This is a solar for supplying power. Here is the light sensor. Here is the wind sensor. Here is the relative humidity and temperature sensors. There are sensors in the soil. There are a ton of different sensors, and those sensors measure solar radiation, soil temperature, air temperature, humidity, wind direction, speed, precipitation, and other things. And all those data are used in Penman-Monteith or some kind of equation, and the equation gives us the value for evapotranspiration. Now, as an attendee of this webinar, I don't want you to only know how to do it, but also a science behind what's going on finding data, and that is why I'm explaining this to you. So when the weather station calculates all these all these numbers for different factors. They put it in the equation and they pop out a number, and that number is evapotranspiration. And that will be needed to calculate the landscape water needs. Now, moving on to next one, estimating maximum water. So this fact, okay, yeah, Russ, I will share those links with you, obviously, after the webinar. Thank you. And these webinars will be uploaded in the YouTube as well. So with the links in the YouTube. So, but I'll make sure I share these with you. There's another thing known as estimating maximum water month. So out of all the months, even the EPA has a data finder link where you can estimate water use per maximum water use month. Now, why is that needed? It is needed because if you can provide your landscape the amount of water needed on the month that uses maximum water, you should be good, relatively good on other months. So for sake of easiness or for sake of convenience and doing it quickly, if you calculate the water, if you determine which month need the maximum amount of water for your landscape, and if you are okay with that, then you should be okay with the rest of the month. And that is why the EPA has the link to calculate the maximum water use month. Now, and also there is a barcode here. If I click on, so let's do a small sort exercise here. I will give you the location, this one, like Tucson, Arizona, and I want you to all to go in the link and find out what is the maximum water use month and how much for this zip code. Let's do it. 98101, Seattle, Washington. So let's do 98101. 98101. Okay, so for the peak for Seattle, Washington, 98101 is in July, and estimated ETO value is 5.43 inches. Now, if you go for Tampa, Florida, which is 33592, it is April. It's not July. It's April, and its ETO value is 6.19. If you do it for Logan, Utah, 84341, it's July and it's 8.78 inches. So EPA has this quick and simple website where you can find out the maximum water use month. And if you can have that much water, if you can provide that much water, you should be good to go. The other thing is, depending on ETO, reference evapotranspiration, and precipitation, you can determine when to start watering. Now, this is a graph for Logan and Cedar City, with this upward-facing graph being ETO and this down graph being precipitation or rainfall. Now, you can easily see in the graph that let's go for Logan. For Logan, there is more precipitation than there is reference evapotranspiration until mid-March. But still, until April or May, you should be pretty good because there is enough soil moisture in the soil. So you irrigate somewhere down the road here, mid-April maybe, or sometimes even maybe May. But for when you look at the Cedar City, the reference evapotranspiration is always more than precipitation, even in January. Does that mean you need to water in January? Basically, no, because the temperature is lower, the plants are not actively growing, but maybe for some trees, you might do a single irrigation. But when these differences get higher, obviously in the March or mid-March or even mid-February, you might start watering and you might wind down around November. So this graph will give us a tentative idea on when do you start watering. But again, Utah has made a lot of things easier. And this Conserve Water, Slow the Flow Utah, conservewater.gov is a website. Let's click this. That will tell you when to water your landscape. So I'll put this link here, and and our colleagues at different department, basically by DNR, but our friends working on water conservation update this lawn watering guide weekly. It says see you in spring for all the Utah. So basically, no watering now. Now, you know the science, how what's going in, and you know how that is calculated, but then there are easier way to do things. So this is all about evapotranspiration and how it is calculated, how we bring that number for calculation, and how we do it. Now let's move on to this the other factor, that is plant factor. Different plant species has different water requirement and different ability to cope with drought. Generally speaking, as the slower the plants grows, the lesser water they need. And the more the productivity, the higher the water they will need. That is because if there are more leaves, if they are actively growing, they produce that energy by photosynthesizing. And to photosynthesize, they need carbon dioxide along with water. So the more photosynthesis, active photosynthesis, the more water the plant is pulling. The less photosynthesis, the less growth, the less productivity, the smaller the plant, the less the water they use, generally. Water-wise plant can escape, tolerate, or be resistant to drought. So this is the example of plant that they can tolerate drought by absorbing more water in them when the water is available to them. Meaning these plants here swells up when they takes more water, but then when the water is limited, they shrink, they use the water that is internally available. It's like camel. A camel drinks a lot of water, walks a long way. Similar are those plants which tolerate drought. Some plants are resistant. They're not much resistant to drought kind of plants, but this is an example of the plant that is tolerant, resistant to drought. Meaning when there is drought, they completely die. Only few green things remain. But then in the winter, when it's re-watered, so these are the plants 3 week in drought, and when we irrigate it for 2 weeks, it comes back like this. What I'm trying to say here is plant can store water and tolerate drought. Plant can be resistant to drought, or sometimes like tulips, they flower early and store water in the roots and gear up for next season so that they skip the drought period. So there are different mechanisms that plant use to cope with the drought, and they are usually water-wise plant. And those phenomena are usually governed by the genes. So the genes may produce the abscisic acid. What abscisic acid is usually stress hormone, and it reduces transpiration loss by closing the stomata. There are osmotic regulator and antioxidants. So these are the molecules. So antioxidants and osmotic regulators. These are different kind of molecules with different physiology, but to name a few on what they does, sometimes they bind to the membrane, so the membrane is not detailed or do not break down in the drought. Sometimes they store solute in the cells, so the water from the cells do not leave the cell. Basically, they stabilize the cell in drought. Now, chlorophyll, some genes also change the concentration of chlorophyll in the leaf, and when there is less chlorophyll, less photosynthesis, they use less water, and plants are more adaptive or tolerant to drought. You can also easily tell if the plant is drought tolerant by looking at the trait of plants. So if you see a plant with hard, leathery leaves or thick leaves, then they are drought tolerant because they do not let those thick leaves either hold water, or hard leaves, they have less stomata or have a coating over the leaf, so there is less water leaving the leaf. Long and narrow leaves, they easily shed in the drought. Small leaves, the smaller the leaves, the less photosynthesis or less transpiration. Waxy or hairy leaves, if you see those waxy leaves, the wax forms a coating on the leaf surface. So the water doesn't escape as easily from the leaves. Hairy leaves, what they does is, like, imagine there are a lot of hairs growing and the wind is blowing. Those hairs are the obstruction in the wind direction. So wind cannot take up the water from the leaf surface. Also, when there are a lot of hairs in the leaf, the transpiration happening creates a boundary layer. So the water hangs around in that leaves hair. So they do not leave the leaves easily, and kind of create a microclimate where there's more um, humidity around the leaf surface, and then it reduces the transpiration. Also, the gray foliage reflect sunlight, fleshy stems and leaves. They take up water. As I told before, slow growing plant. It conserve water. Underground storage systems such as lilies and daffodils, if you see them, usually they can be tolerate less water. Now here in this picture, I talked about the trait of the plant that is usually water conserving characteristics, and I have a picture in the slide of a plant that that is a water wise. Can anyone in the chat tell me what characters do you see that tells it's a water wise plant? Anyone? Hair on the leaves? Yes, good. Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Susan. Yes, hairs on the leaves, also gray things to reflects the sunlight. They are also thicker in size, so they can hold water. So a lot of different water conserving characteristics. Also, this is desert olive, and it has hard and leathery leaves, so they are water conserving characteristics. I talked all about water conserving characteristics, and as you all know, to calculate the amount of water, we need that plant factor, not all these um, theory. So let's dive into that. Plant factor is expressed as a percentage of reference ETO. When I told you these water-wise plant, their ETO usually ranges from 0.1 to 0.5. And it differs by plant species. And it's not easy. There are a lot of different plants, and no one has ever documented the plant factor for all these plants. But when we see those characters in the sticks in the plants, we can easily put the plant factor somewhere between 0.1 to 0.5. But then there are a lot of plants whose plant factor are also being identified, and these links will provide you with the information on what the plant factor would be for different plants. There are a lot of different plants, a lot of different, and the plant factor is not available for all different plants. But generally, in this chart, you can see if it is a tree, shrubs, vine, and ground, its plant factor is 0.5. Again, I must tell you that these number are not like, it's not exact, but it's close. So if you see trees, shrubs, vines, ground cover, we can put 0.5. And this is adapted from California, University of California. And perennials, herbaceous perennial, 0.5. If you're desert adapted plants, it's 0.3. Annual flowers and bedding plants, 0.8. Kentucky bluegrass, 0.8. But then there are a lot of different varieties of turf, and different varieties have different water use. There are a lot of type of trees. Some like fruit trees usually have higher plant factor compared to a low water use trees. So there is the plant factor for all the crops are not being identified. But then if it is a water wise plant, we can put it somewhere around 0.3, 0.4, or 0.5. If it is a desert plant, really grows in like Arizona climate, we can have 0.1 to 0.3. If you have Bermuda grass, Joshua grass, St. Augustine buffalo grass, 0.6 or even 0.5. Fruit crops, as I told you, it is a little higher than regular trees. It's 0.8, 0.9. Home fruit crop, evergreen is 1. Home vegetable crops is 1, 0.9 sometimes. But then these links will tell us if the plants are water-wise or not water-wise. And we can use this chart usually even if the list do not tell you if the plant factor, it can tell the category, like if it is high, moderate, low, or very low water using plant. And I will answer all the questions towards the end, Julie, but thanks for your question. And please type questions in Q&A so that it's easier to find out. But this is fine, Julie. You don't need to do that, but from now on, you can do it. So if you have a plant that says high water use, put somewhere between 0.7 to 0.9 ETU. If the categories of if your list says moderate water use, you can put it 0.4 to 0.6, low water 0.1 to 3, very low, highly drought tolerant species 0.1. So this is how you put in the plant factor for the different plants. Now let's go to area factor. Area is basically the surface measured by land, surface measurement of a land or a zone. It can be calculated by multiplying length with width. So this is a basic math for all of us. And in the landscape, landscape can be of different shapes, different type, but and then we need to calculate the area for landscape to determine the water need. So if you have a triangular landscape, the formula for calculating the area would be half length into height. So height is the height, 4 feet. The length is the length, like 3 feet. And you calculate half length into height, and that will give you the area for triangle. For rectangle, it's 4 feet by length into breadth. So here, for A, it would be half 3 into 4 would be 6 square feet. For B would be also 6 square feet. For C would be 3 into 4 square feet. Now, we all know not all landscape are triangle or rectangle. So what you can do to calculate the area of a landscape, say this is a landscape here, and this center thing is a hardscape or a house or something like that, and this blue area is the landscape. What we need to do is we need to divide it to different shapes that we can, or different mathematical shapes or geometric shapes. And now for this landscape, we have 1 square, 1 rectangle, 2, 3 rectangle, 1 triangle, and 1 trapezoid. So we can calculate the area of rectangle, this one, this one, this one, this one, add it up, and we'll get area of the landscape. Or even easier, you can go to Google or earthgoogle.com to the tools and just pull up the measurement thing, and it'll give you the length and the area. Or you can use this calculator, and this calculator will tell, like if you put the length and breadth, and it will calculate the area for you. So when you add up all this area, it will be the area of the landscape. Now, one thing here is that I need to talk, and that is important, is hydrozoning. So hydrozone, let's go to this. Hydrozone is a group of plants with the same water use classification and microclimate assigned to a single irrigation valve. Meaning when an irrigation valve opens and it provides the water to a certain area, all the plants in that area would be same water using plant. And that makes sense, right? If you have a plant that has high water use and low water use in the same hydrozone, and if you turn on the valve and irrigate enough water for the high water using plant, you would be over irrigating the low water use plant. Or if you apply for low water use plant, you would be under irrigating the high water use plant. So in the hydrozone, we need to have plants that have similar water use. And when you calculate the area and water budget, we calculate the water budget for each hydrozone, and then we add it all up. And then that would be the water used for entire landscape. So now we know how to calculate the area. We know what is the plant factor. We know the reference evapotranspiration, and that is all what is needed to calculate the plant water need or water budget. So the gross water budget is weather into plant type into area, and if you want to find the numbers in gallons, you just put in this multiplier or this constant that will take everything into gallons. So weather is inches, plant type again is it doesn't have any unit, area is square feet, and 0.62 is the constant to take the number into gallons. So let's do this very simple calculation. Say we have 1,000 square feet of landscape. We have plant factor of 0.8, peak monthly ET of 6 inches. What would be the water budget for this landscape? Can anyone write the answer here in the chat? I will give you two minutes or until we get the first answer. And I will also do it with you all. So the landscape area is 1,000 square feet. ETO is 6. Did anyone find the answer? Okay, so let's check that. 2976. Thanks, Marianne, Natalie. Thank you. So that is the water budget for the landscape. Now, will you also tell me at what length of time or a period of time do we need to apply that 2,976 gallon of water? A monthly. Good. Yes, it's monthly. You are smart. So yeah, it doesn't. So because the peak monthly the ET is given in month, we calculated the gallons in month. If it was in a week, we would have gotten the answer in week. If it was in day, the answer would be in day. So if we get something like this, 12,000 square feet of landscape, PF of 0.8 for the zip code 84107, then we can easily go to water budget finder and calculate the ET from there. And when we use that, we will get 5,893 gallons. So this is how you calculate the water budget, gross water budget. If there is something like, say, 2,000 square feet of landscape has all turf and peak ET is 9.9, and this is the graph. The turf has ET of somewhere between 0.7 to 0.9. So what we do is we do once with 0.7, we do once with 0.9, and the water need may be somewhere from 8,593 to 11,000, or we could just average it out. We could use any number between these. And again, I said the plant factor is not like rigid. It is like a range. So we get that water budget in range. Or if we have 0.8, we will get a specific number here. Now, we also need to consider the precipitation. So here, what if it rains? If it rains, we can subtract the amount of precipitation from reference evapotranspiration and calculate the water budget. It's as easy as that. And now, also so this number here, 8,593, is the amount of water that is needed by the plants. We can't say that all the water that we apply is received by plant because there are a lot of inefficiencies. There may be leaks, there may be air drift, there may be percolation and runoff, there may be equipment error, and a lot of things going in. So usually we need to apply a little more than what is needed. So all those inefficiencies can be adjusted for. And for sprinkler efficiency or for the overhead irrigation, 65 to 80% efficiency is considered good. Now, there are a lot of ways to calculate, find out inefficiencies like leaks, air drift, percolations can be minimized by just checking, maintaining, applying water when there is less rain, less wind, things like that. But then there's one important consideration that I would like to talk about, which is distribution uniformity. So distribution uniformity will tell us when we are applying water, are all the plants in the landscape receiving similar water, or is there a zone that receives more and a zone that receives less? And to do this test, you map the area, like in the figure here, you map the area, you evenly distribute identical container, divisible by 4, because that's easy for calculation, like this in the landscape. And then they record the water collected in the container, maybe after 5, 10, or 15 minutes when you run the irrigation, and calculate the average water collected in lowest 25% of the container, average water collected in all the container, and that will give us a DU, or distribution uniformity. Let's do it. So here, say these are the numbers for different. This is 550 ml, this is 400, 600. So you get this number when you put these cups in there and run the irrigation for say 20 minutes. What you need to do first is sort the numbers by ascending order. So lowest first, 350, 350, 400, 400, 400. So this is how you sort it. And then average of lowest 25. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There are 16 containers. So lowest 4 would be 4. Lowest 25% would be 4 containers, 350, 350, 400, 400, and you divide it by 4. It's 375. Now you average all the values. It's 468.75. Now you do distribution uniformity as 375 into 100 by 468.75, and it is exactly 80%. So that is your distribution uniformity. And sometimes distribution uniformity is also used as irrigation efficiency. And when we put it in the number, it's like 0.8% efficient. So if we apply 100 gallons, our plant will receive 80 gallons. So when we need to consider this in our equation, you can calculate, do everything similar, but you multiply it with your DU. Not in 100 or not in 80%, but at 0.8. You multiply it by that, and you get your net water budget. So you accommodate for precipitation, you accommodate for distribution uniformity, and you will get the net water budget. Say 12,000 square feet of landscape, peak plant factor 0.8, ET 6 inches, precipitation 1, and IE of 7. So you use that equation in the formula, you get this net water budget, and that would be 3,366 gallons. Now, this you calculate this for each hydrozone, because each hydrozone would have a specific plant factor. So you calculate it for all the hydrozone, and you add up all the numbers, water budget need or water need, and you will get the total water need of the landscape. Now, this is how you do it. But then here at Utah State, we are trying to make things easier for you. And so we have developed a calculator with the link here. If you click on this link, in this link, you need to provide the location, month, plant, area, and adjustment. And if you click on this link, what it does is, so this, what we put in here is the average evapotranspiration from 2000 to 2020. So if we select, there should be the location or the weather station name for the site that is close to you. So choose the site that is very close to you. For me, I would always choose Logan because I'm close to Logan. And say I would need the ET for the month of August. And I am growing low water use turf. And my landscape is 15,000 square feet. And in percent, my irrigation is 80% efficient. And no, I do not want to adjust for precipitation. I'll just subtract that. Or if I would like to adjust, it's fine. And you say calculate. So you need to apply, I need to apply 42,480 gallons in August. Now, if I do not adjust the precipitation, it would go to 48,000. So meaning there were some precipitation in the past this 20-year data. So we adjusted for that. And then that is how you use it. But now in this calculator, you might want to use your own plant factor. Now to use your own plant factor, so selecting the location, it's easy. You will know that. Selecting the month, that's easy. Now these are the plant factor used for various type of plants given here. If you wish to use your own plant factor, calculate the answer using cool season turf. Okay, say we need our own plant factor, so we calculate with cool season turf, and it's 64,000. Now what we need to do is multiply the answer by desired plant factor. Say we need something for plant factor of 0.5. So 64 64449.0 into bracket open 0.5 by, so what does it say? Desired plant factor by desired plant factor is 0.5 and divide by 0.8, and that will give us 40,000 gallons. So if our plant factor was 0.5, you have this number here, you multiply it by multiply the answer by this desired plant factor value, divide by 0.8, and that will be the water need for your landscape. Now that is obviously for a month, and if you would like to know, and you need to spread that water throughout like weeks, or I don't know how often do you irrigate, and that is determined by plant type, determined by soil, and a lot of other factors, which is a topic for another webinar. But this is how you use this tool here to calculate the water need. And let me put this link also in the chat here so you can play with it. And we just developed this few months ago, so we haven't tested it. If there is any glitch or any problem, I would love to have your email and we would work on correcting it, but it should work. We did some beta test. Now, so it all boils down to landscape water requirement depends on local weather, and on the local weather, it's reference evapotranspiration. It depends on plant species, and we use plant factor for that. It depends on landscape area, and we calculate water need for each hydrozone in the landscape, and we add it all up. And that will give us landscape, how much water does our landscape need. And tips to improve water efficiency is, these days, even DNR is providing rebates for a smart irrigation controller. You can use that, and it will adjust your watering, and it will save some water. Consider planting some drought-tolerant plant. Consider grouping plant by hydrozone, and regularly check the irrigation for leaks and other kinds of problem. With that, I think it's time that we end the webinar, and I would like to thank all of you joining in.